Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to create an FPS game in Unity, and welcome to episode 8. In this tutorial we are going to add in some sound effects for when we fire our weapon, and we're also going to add in some more UI as well as getting it a little bit more functional. Don't forget, click subscribe button and click on the bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial still to come in this series and everything else on game development on my channel. With that in mind, let's get to work. So we are very zoomed out right now because we are working with our canvas. We explored a little bit of the UI last time, but right now let's go back to our first person controller and let's deal with our weapon and its sound effects. Make it a little bit more realistic, I guess. So to do this, we're going to need to bring in another asset, and that's going to be an audio asset. So let's go over here. Let's create a new folder. Let's call it audio. And in here, let's create another subfolder simply called SFX, short for sound effects. And in here, let's drag and drop this sound clip. As always, you can head to the website, downloads and assets, FPS series tutorial number 8, and you can download it for free. Just make sure you unzip it before you bring it into Unity, as it will not work otherwise. Now, we have this sound and we need this to play whenever we actually fire our weapon, and only when we fire our weapon. So let's go to our FPS controller, and where we've got our weapons, let's close all that up and let's right click on the character. Let's create empty and let's rename this to audio. And in here, once again, let's create another empty object and we'll call this SFX. And in here, let's create another one and we'll call this pistol shot. So this sound effect, or rather this object, will only have the sound effect of the pistol shot, which means we can drag and drop that asset either on pistol shot or over here in the inspector panel. It's up to you, however you want to do it. So we have all of this here, and to be honest, not all of this is going to be relevant right now. One thing we do need to do is make sure we untick play on awake. The reason we do that is because we don't want this sound to be heard every time we enter this scene. So if we press play, we'd hear that pistol shot even though our pistol isn't firing. So make sure that that is unticked. A couple of other things that we could take a look at is the pitch and volume. You could decrease the volume if you wanted. You could decrease the pitch. Obviously, if you increase the pitch, it's going to be very high pitched. To put that into perspective, to show you what I mean, I am actually going to tick loop and tick play on awake and then press play in the scene. Now this is going to be, yeah. Okay, so that was a quick example. I know that was probably very annoying and I apologize to headphone users there. But all we did is play around with the pitch, and you could hear that we adjusted the pitch upwards, which meant the sound pitched higher, and it also, because of that, repeated itself a lot quicker. Now for all intents and purposes, we're going to keep it as 1 on the volume and 1 on the pitch. We don't need to worry about spatial blend or any reverb. This sound will do as it is. The only meaning of it is to just fire when our weapon goes, so we don't really need to play around with it much. So let's untick loop and untick play on awake. Now that sound effect is ready for us to play whenever we fire our pistol. So let's head to our pistol fire script. Much like we did with the muzzle flash, we need to add in another variable here. And this one is going to be slightly different. So let's declare it public, and its type is known as audio source. So audio source. And we can call this anything we want, but let's call it something relative. We'll have it pistol shot. Keep it in line with everything else we've created, the file, the game object, so we know what it is. And we need to place that line of code which will fire it inside this coroutine. We need it to be heard as soon as we fire the pistol, so let's set it just before we turn the muzzle flash on. So down here we need to put pistol shot dot play, open close bracket, semicolon, and save. That's all there is to it for adding a sound effect. just 2 extra lines of code. And I always say that coding is actually so much easier than what people actually think, because when you think about it methodically, it's easy, because all we've done there is use logic and added a variable and played that variable. As simple as that. So if we head back into Unity now, wait for it to compile, let's click on global control and then let's add pistol shot over here. Nice and simple. Now let's press play. So whenever we fire our weapon, cool, it actually sounds like we have interaction. Simple as that. I really can't stress how easy it is to add a sound effect to something like that. So the next thing I wanted to do is, obviously weapons have ammo, so we need some kind of ammo count on our screen. And we're going to be using the canvas once again for that. So let's click Game Object, let's go to UI, and let's go to, in fact, we'll make this as tidy as we can for now. Let's have a panel. Now a panel will cover the entire screen. So if I click on Game View, we can see that it does look rather faded because of that panel. So let's head to Scene. Let's click Panel once again. Now we need to reduce the size of this panel. So are we looking at the canvas in the correct way? Well, let's quickly check. So let's click on Anchor and let's click on the bottom right. We can see it's appeared on the bottom left. So let's click it back on Stretch. Let's pan ourselves around and make sure we're looking at it correctly. There we go. So I want our ammo count to be on the bottom right side of the screen. So I'm going to click Anchor, click on bottom right, and then I'm going to use the Rect tool to adjust the size of this panel. So over here we have this square with the 4 dots around it. If we select that, you'll notice this object now has the blue corners. That means that we can adjust the size like so. And let's double click on panel to zoom in. And it's a little bit big, so I'm going to drag it out from the side and then shrink it down just a little bit to there. And let's have a look at our game view. That's our ammo panel now. That seems fairly decent. And again, I think I mentioned in the last tutorial, you take more time to do this kind of thing. You know, don't rush it like I do. It's your game. It's your pride and joy. You take as much time as you need to. I'm going to change the colour to black. Maybe a very dark blue. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe a very dark blue. You can see that the alpha is set to 100. I might increase that to 150. Just so we can actually see the panel a little better. And inside that panel, I'm going to place some text. So make sure we have the panel selected. Right click. Let's go to UI and let's go to text. You can see that text now appears in there. Just like we did with the panel, I'm going to increase the size of this text box, and we can't really see anything right now, but let's change that. Let's increase the font size to 24. And let's select the color down here and change it to white. 24 still looks a bit small, so let's change it to 44. That'll do. Come change the font if we had extra fonts, which we will come on to at some point. But for now, I want to align it to the right. And I'm going to have it aligned center as well and see how that looks. New text. Brilliant. I think that should do for now. So, how do we make it so as that text actually displays ammo rather than, well, new text? Well, we need to create a couple of scripts. It's kind of a sequence that will occur when we collect ammo and that kind of thing, but that'll come a little later on. I want to just get a script which tells us what ammo is on there, and then we'll probably move on to a couple of other things before we get UI functionality working correctly. For now, though, let's actually make a script to change this from new text. I mean, logically, you could type in here ammo 5 or whatever, but we want a script to be able to change that for us, so as when we collect ammo later on in development, it'll automatically update. So let's go to our scripts and let's go to weapons, because this is to do with weapons. Let's right click, create C# script, and we'll call this ammo display. And I've put a U there instead of a Y. But that actually gives me a great opportunity to show you a few things. So I've spelled display wrong there. I'm going to rename this so it's correct. And hopefully, we haven't got an error just yet, but let's open that ammo display script up. And you'll notice here it says ammo display. So it's still spelled wrong in the class name. And do you remember a couple of tutorials ago when I mentioned about the class name and the script name having to be the same? Well, this is also going to be an exercise on what will happen if it isn't the same. So we're going to write the script. We know what the error is, so don't worry about that. We're going to write the script and see why it won't work. So let's start by adding in a variable. So the variable that we're going to use is to do with UI. So we're going to come back to why that's important in a couple of moments. But for now, let's declare that text box that we've just inserted. So public game object ammo text UI semicolon. And let's get rid of the annotations and void start because we don't need them. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in another variable, which is going to be our ammo count itself. So public int, because it's an integer, and we'll have pistol count. Now this will need to be something called static a little later on. We're not going to change it just yet. The reason being is because we need other scripts to interact with this script, and when we get around to doing that, I'll explain a little more why it's important. For now, though, all that matters is those two variables are in place. We also need to add in a namespace for the UI. Now, remember when I said it's important to remember that we are dealing with UI elements? We need to tell the script that we are dealing with UI elements, which means up here, beneath using Unity Engine, we put using Unity Engine.UI. semicolon. And I think I mentioned it, you could kind of think of this as a way for the script to recognize where it needs to pull information from because we've stated that up there. So at this point, what we need to do is say ammo text.ui, sorry, ammo text UI dot get component, much like we did with our pistol, and in spiky brackets, text. Now, why text? Well, if we head back into Unity and click on the text itself, so this is our object, this is the component that we're getting. And remember, the subcomponent is also called text. So when referring to that subcomponent, we don't actually use a capital letter. So that means that this will be getComponent.text, then our parentheses, and dot text. And if you're using Visual Studio like I am, you'll see that there is no capitalization there for it. It is text, so you kind of assume that that's right anyway. So we're going to make that text equal to ammo with a colon, a space, and then a quote to close that, and then plus pistol count, semicolon. So what's happening here is we are making that text equal to the word ammo and then whatever the value of pistol count actually is. So if we end up changing pistol count to 7 because we've just picked up 7 shots, it will update it on the screen. So we can kind of simulate that in this tutorial as well. So I'm going to save that script. And remember, our class name isn't the same. So we're just going to wait for that to update. Before we go any further, let's quickly rename some of these things. So let's rename raw image. Let's call this cursor for now. And let's rename panel to be ammo panel. And let's rename text to be ammo text. There we go. So everything's named correctly. Now let's add that ammo display script onto our global control. There we go, we can't. So if you get this error that says can't add script ammo display because the script class cannot be found, If you come across that error, you'll more than likely have the same error I have, where the script name and the class name do not match. To sort that, you would either have to change the script name to what the class name says, or change the class name to what the script name says. So in this case, let's change it to ammo display, resave the script, head back to Unity, let it compile, and then you can add ammo display to your global control. And you just need to add the ammo text UI, which is the ammo text right there. So currently it says new text. When we press play, that's now going to change to say ammo 0. Awesome. So if you could imagine that we are simulating collecting ammo, so we've just picked up 7 shots, that script would end up talking to this script and say 7. So you can see on the screen now, we've just increased that. And you can see that if we collected 7,748, it would update on our screen. Awesome. So interacting between scripts is not too difficult, but as long as you get the process right, it's fairly simple and it's kind of fun to work with, to be honest. So next tutorial, I'm trying to think what the best thing to do is. I think we're going to look at something called raycast. Now, a raycast is vital when we are creating a first-person shooter, and you'll probably understand why, if not already, in the next tutorial. And we might look at bringing in some other assets for our game to make it look a little bit better than what it is right now. Because it's a tiny bit plain at the moment, isn't it? There's not a great deal going on, is there? It's just walls, floor, ceiling, and a falling crate for whatever reason. So, until that next tutorial, thanks very much for watching, guys.